Hello everyone, welcome to MLAS 800, and this is week 3, and we're doing 2 labs this week. No lectures, we're going to just jump straight into labs, and the first thing we're going to do for this week is our first lab is going to be focused on getting familiar with Google Colab, and then also getting familiar with Python. We're just going to do a quick Python primer, nothing too detailed, just a high level. And the first thing we need to do to get started is go ahead and jump out to google.com, or you can choose your favorite search engine. The first thing you'll want to do is do a search on Google Colab. So Google Colab. And you're going to go to it's collabresearch.google.com, and you're going to depending on if you've used it before, it might take you straight to your account. If you're signed in to Google already, it'll show up signed in, and it'll probably open a notebook up for you. But if you're not signed in, you'll get a fresh screen just like this. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in. I'm going to get signed in under my Gmail account, and I'm just going to go ahead and get logged in. And the reason that I want to do that is because any work that I do is going to be saved within my Google account on Google Colab. So it works just fine for what we're going to do. Again, like I'd mentioned earlier, we may play around with Spider a little bit, but depending on how well Google Colab works for us, we'll see what kind of trouble we can get ourselves into with Google Colab. Okay. All right. So first up, let's just kind of run through the Colab interface. You've got, of course, it's very similar. You got your ribbon for managing your notebook. By the way, it's a Jupyter notebook that we're working in. So it's a Jupyter notebook file that we'll be creating. It just makes teaching easier as well because I can annotate as we move along, and we can create a narrative around your code. That's a lot easier to explain. Okay, you can come in here. It's very Jupyter like. If you've ever run Jupyter notebooks, old school, like on your machine, not via the cloud, it has the same, very similar setup. If you go through the table of contents on the left, if you're looking at this fresh, you've got data science exercises to get you going. Right here, they're showing matplot and being able to do some basic graphing and visualization. They also have some tutorials on TensorFlow and neural networks, and so it's kind of nice. And then they've got, of course, how to load data and visualize data and getting started with BigQuery, and there's all kinds of other stuff. Pandas, which is also a big part of the data science world. And then, of course, for artificial intelligence and machine learning type work, they've got working using TensorFlow with GPUs, and then they've got, of course, more. I say of course because it's Google, but they have examples for how to work and do all kinds of other different things, from video interpolations to image vision type of research and machine learning for text classification, natural language processing. So there's a lot here. You can also look at the machine learning piece. They've got, again, they've got very similar. It's the data science and the machine learning are the two of the same. There's more resources, two of the same workbook rather on here. So if you look at the data science piece, that's the top part. And then the machine learning here is the bottom part. Okay, so more resources. Of course, there's a lot more that you can. Um, uh, I think the examples here are going to be helpful if you wanted to look through that. But that's pretty much just getting started. And that's a quick high-level overview. Now, let's go ahead and get our first notebook going. So we're going to say new notebook in Drive, and then it's going to spin up an IPYNB notebook. That's a Jupyter notebook file, and it's a Python notebook, and it's an interactive Python notebook. And we don't have a title for it. That's okay. We'll show you how you do it. But first what we're going to do is we're going to create a text block. Um, and in this text block, it's going to be lab session lab session one lab, and then this session one lab is going to be um, Python primer, and we're just going to bold it so you can type that out, highlight it, bold, and then it's going to put these double asterisks on both sides of it. And we're going to make it larger too by a couple. So we'll put 2 hashtags in front of it, and then we'll save that, and then we'll move it up rather. We'll save it up and then move it up above the code, and then we'll start our code. This is our first coding line. So the very first thing we're going to do with Python is, and again, this is our first session is just going to be focused on Python. Just a quick primer on Python. Again, you don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to do a lot of computer science work. Or this is just to get you going on the basics of really a lot of the stuff that we're going to be using Python for. So we can, in other words, we can make Python as complicated as we need to be, um, or we can make it as moderately difficult, or we can make it difficult, or we can make it as simple as we want it to be. And we're going to try to keep it, I will try to keep it as simple as possible for us as we move along in the course. So that way, it's a little bit of something that both the technical as well as I should say programmers and non-programmers alike can kind of get their heads wrapped around what we're doing here. So first up, let's go with comments. So this is a comment when I put a hashtag, and which means it's code that doesn't execute. So using Google Colab with Python, that's our first comment. And then we're going to say this is a Python line comment. All right. And so if we run this, if you just hit the play button here, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to it's just going to run this code and do nothing. And so it's initializing Google Python, and then it ran and didn't do anything, which is fine for us. And so there's another comment structure. These are called string literals. And I put triple ticks, like they're 3 single quotes. You can do triple double quotes as well. But this is also a block comment, but Python doesn't technically have a block comment structure. This is what's called a string literal, but Python, the interpreter, just ignores it. But we can use this. So while technically not a comment block, Python string literals can also be used for code documentation. And I can tell you that using Google Colab, because they have an AI that helps you with this now, is unbelievably helpful, because as you saw me typing, the AI started to, they have a large language model on the back end, Gemini, that's actually helping us to write code. So you also notice in the upper right-hand corner next to your sign-in profile, your avatar in the upper right-hand corner, you have this RAM and disk. This will come in handy. You'll want to keep tabs on this because we will be using up RAM and disk space. So we're given 12 gigs of RAM, and we've got 100 and what is that? 130-ish, little over 130. No, I'm sorry, 107. Sorry, 107 gigs of disk space. So it's awfully specific. Okay, so that's what we've got that's available to us. You might have more just depending on if you have a subscription or if you're new, or to using Google Colab. So these won't be exactly the same as what you have, but they should be pretty close. Okay, so let's get to some coding. We're going to create a variable. I'm going to create a string variable, and it's going to be called hello world. We're going to create our first hello world program, world, and um, and then we're going to print it. Excuse me. And this string variable, so we're creating a variable, and then we're taking this right here, and then we're reading it into this variable called string variable, and then we're just printing it back. So we're going to run this, and it's a very simple program, and it's there we go. So we have a return, and it returned hello world, which is perfect. That's exactly what we need. We'll put a comment. So comments, Python comments can be placed anywhere. I can put them in like this, can also be placed here. So that's our first program. So that's pretty good. We're doing pretty good. Now, we created a variable. We made a string called hello world, and we took that text and we printed it using the print function. And that's how we create a simple hello world Python program. So fantastic. Now, let's go, since we're talking about variables, Python has a whole list of variables, different kinds. Let's work with two simple ones right now. I'm going to create another comment here. It's going to be just Python variables. This just delineates that we've got another part of our code that we're going to play with. X, and then I'm going to create a variable called x equal to 30, or rather a variable called x, and I'm going to read 30 into it. And oops, I don't want to. It's pretty smart, so it's jumping ahead, but I don't want to do that. So that's the AI. When the AI will actually create simple programs for you in Python, which is kind of cool because it saves a lot of typing versus like the way I used to have to teach it. Even teaching Python a couple years ago was a lot hard. It was not harder, but it was more time intensive if you don't have an AI that can help you with this. So it's kind of nice to have that feature, but we don't need that for what we're teaching here. Not yet, anyway. X is what's called X is an int variable, or what's called integer. And then I'm going to create another variable called y, and we're going to say this is Sally. And then this is going to be y is a string, is a str variable, string. So those are two comments that explains those. So we can go ahead. It says print x and print y. If you hit the tab button, it will automatically fill those in. Why not? Let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to push play on that. So we got our first hello world. This is our first. That's this right here. Then print x is the 30, and then print y is Sally. But that's a pretty basic, this is a real basic program. I want to add a little bit more to this. I want to do a little bit more. So I'm going to actually create, I'm going to concatenate this and say, I'm going to concatenate y, and then the plus sign is concatenation. So that's, think of the plus sign as a glue. So I'm adding, I can use it to add, but I can also use it to glue strings together. So I'm going to say y plus, and then I'm going to say is plus, and I'm going to use what's called a string x plus, and I'll explain this all out here, years old. So then now I'm going to rerun this, and then so what this does is it takes y, so it takes Sally's name, it takes Sally, writes it into variable y, and then I add it to this string here called is, with two spaces, a space in front of it and a space behind it. So it takes Sally, and then I use the plus sign to glue that is to the tail end of Sally here. So Sally space is space, and then I take 30. Now I used what's called a conversion. So because x is an integer, I have to convert that integer to a string. So that's what that does. So I take the x, I convert it to a string, and then I add it to another string, which is years old. which gets us this whole string. Sally is 30 years old. So that's perfect. So that's kind of a crash course in Python variables. We're going to do more. We're going to talk a little bit about data types. Um, and then let's see. And I think we'll end on operators. We'll do control flow and then operators, and that'll pretty much finish up our first lab. Excuse me, first lab for this week, session 1 lab. Okay. All right. So then that's a quick overview of Python variables. Now, there's another thing about Python that you should understand, that Python is also case sensitive. So if I print the variable x, and that looks like something that should work, right? Well, this is going to error out because x is not defined. And the reason x is not defined is there's a difference between x and x. So in other words, Python is case sensitive. So remember, Python is case sensitive. Big X and little x, big Y, little y, they're all different. They're unique characters, and Python treats them as unique characters. So in other words, if I switch that to lowercase x, I reran it, I'm going to get a 30 at the bottom of that. So that's something that I'm going to keep in here. I'm going to actually comment that out just so you know. This will return an error. Okay. Okay, good deal. So next up is data types. So as it relates to, we talked a little bit about integer versus string. Python has many data types too. Python has many data types. So variables can come in a lot of different flavors. So we're going to run through these pretty quick. I am a string, and then that's a string, str data type. B, I'm going to say is 304, and this is an int. And then C, I'm going to make this up, equals to, sure, why not? It's actually helping me out here. 3.14, that's pi, right? C equal to 3.14, that is a float. So I'm going to do that. I'm not going to cover complex. I don't want to confuse you. I'm going to do a list, D equals to, and then I'm going to say grape, and then banana, and then orange, and then this is what's called a list. And then E, we're going to create what's called a tuple or a tuple. Sometimes I like to call them tuples. Some people call them tuples. I still don't know which one's the the common vernacular for tuple or tuple. But I've heard it pronounced both ways, so I don't think you'll be wrong either way. So we're going to create a tuple, and then grape, and then we'll change this up, orange. Yeah, sure, why not? And then we'll call this tuple, and then EF, and then what we're going to do, F equal to, and then F is going to be a set equal to what's going to be called a set. And sets use curly brackets. So they use curly braces. Let's do a salad. Avocado, kale, and then lettuce. And this is called a set. And last but not least is dictionaries. G equals to, and then we've got it right here. Equal to name, Sally, age, 30. That's fine. So we can just go with that. So that's called a dictionary data type. Now we can test this with what's called, and we can type all these out. You see where it does a type A, B, C, D. So it's pretty cool. So the AI is already interpreting that I want to do a type. I'm going to use a type function. So I'm going to go ahead and hit tab, and we'll just go do it. And then it just did all those for me. which makes life easier. So just like I had said earlier, A is a string, B is an int, float, list, tuple, set, dictionary. So that's what it is. Now we can verify. I'm just going to say print D, and then that'll show the list here. All right. So I'm going to delete these. We don't have to keep all these. This is just for illustrative purposes. I'm going to delete those. You can always get them back by letting the AI help you with that. Okay. Here, we can say print A just for, this is show the variable data, and this is going to be show the variable data type. So that's what that would be. All right. Okay. Nice work. So as with any programming language, let's move on to the next topic. As with any type of programming language, you're going to have what's called control flow. So Python has what's called control flow, just like most modern programming languages. Python has programmatic control flow. So let's say we're going to do something real simple. We're going to say if 5 is greater than 2, then I'm going to say print 5 is greater than 2. Perfect. So let's run this, and then we'll see what kind of trouble we can get ourselves into. 5 is greater than 2. Yep, perfect. So that's right. So 5 is greater than 2, so it's going to print. And I want to separate out this control block here. So this one I'm going to actually put on a new code line. So I'm going to hit this button code. It creates a new code line, and I'm going to copy this down because I want to keep this separated. And then yeah, so when this runs, that runs there, and then when this runs, that runs down here. So I can just kind of keep adding code cells in our notebook. So all right, so then that gets us a very simple control flow. We're just using if, but there's a lot more we can do. While loops, we can do else. We can do if, else, then. There's just a lot we can do from a control flow. It's a rich programming language, just like C, just like Java, just like JavaScript. You know, all the you name it. Control flow is very very rich within Python. Now, there's another thing that we need to be on the lookout for when we're doing Python. I'm going to put another comment on here. I'm just now coming around to it. Indentation is uber important to Python in Python. So, for example, if I reran this, I'm going to do another print statement. And then, and this one is if you indent, or I should say outdent, if you outdent this line, you will get an error. All right, so there we go. So, oh yeah, see, yeah, okay, so if we run this, it's not going to cause a problem. 5 is greater than 2, perfect. If you outdent this line, you'll get an error. So let's test it. So if I do this and I rerun it, this shows you what happens. You get an unexpected indent error. So that's because Python is all about code beautification. So how you write code and how you indent code is very much a big part of, is a huge part of Python. Now, that's that when it comes to control flow, you have to watch your indents. You have to watch your indents no matter what, but indentation is important. Okay, so if I do this, rerun it, we should be good to go. All right. So another thing here is, let me see if I can get it to come back here. Indentation is important. And then print this line is not indented, and else I'm curious. Let's see what it does here. Print 5 is not greater than 2. Yeah, sure, why not? So now this indentation, this is off. I don't think this is gonna work. Yeah, invalid syntax. Let's see. We'll fix this here. Okay. So what we can do to fix this is sometimes the um, AI isn't that good. Let's see. There we go. So this is good. So this is just adding a little bit more control flow, and we're just creating another branch in the control flow. So for example, if 5 is not greater than 2, then it will branch out into this 5 is not greater than 2, and we can test that by putting a 6 on this. So if it should now branch out and only print 5 is not greater than 2. So then there we go. So, or 5 is not greater than the expression 5 is not greater than 2. We would say 5 is not greater than 6 in this, right? Just to kind of, I mean, we would actually make this a lot more programmatic. This is just to show you control flow. I would switch these all out to variables. We would make this way more programmatic. But for our purposes, we're just goofing around. So we can leave that here. We can comment it out. I'll leave it up to you, however you want to do that. Okay. Now let's go ahead and jump over to operators, and I think operators is gonna finish us up for our first lab here. So yeah, so Python has operators. All right. And then we have what's called assignment operators and arithmetic operators. And I'm putting these together under the same line because I want to show you kind of how this works. We're going to use our trusty x variable, but we're going to read in a new value to x. Same thing for y, 7 to 89. And then and essentially what we're doing here is we're assign x a value. And then we're doing this too. We're assigning y a value. And then now what we're going to do is some math. So we're going to say x plus y, and then it does it right here. So in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and go through these. I'm going to say print x plus y equal to, and that's going to be addition. That is the arithmetic operator. So I'm going to hit tab. And so then here's what's happening here. So these are the arithmetic operators, right? So plus, minus, multiplication, division, and then these right here, these are just assignment operators. It means that I'm taking a value and assigning it to that variable, and then I'm going to go do something with that variable that I just put data into. So I put 505, and then I put 789 in the 505 into x and 789 into y. And then now I'm going to run it, and it's going to do all this fun math for me. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. All done. So there's more. There's a lot more. And but again, this is a primer. I don't want to, overload you with everything that you can do. I'm keeping it very, very simple for our lab. So now, next up, I have 2 more types of operators I want to show you. I have comparison. Oop, compare. Operators. And I am gonna do do I want to do all those? let's see, are those all the ones I want to show? Yeah, those are the main ones I want to show. I want to do those, and then we'll come back to logical operators. This makes life so much easier for me. Used to have to just type this all out. So, logical operators, I'm sorry, comparison operators. What they do is they compare the value in the variable and give me a Boolean output, what we call a 0 or a 1, a true false output. They give me they do a true false check on the comparison in the comparison of the data. So in this case, what we're doing is x greater than y. So is x greater than y? It is not, so it's false. So then here I'm going to say is x less than y? And that is true, so that's going to be true. And then is x equal to y? That should be false because it is not. And then print x not equal to y. That's what that exclamation point equal or bang equal sometimes is what we say. So that would be true because they are not equal. That is true. Now, if we changed this to 505 and we reran it, what would you think would happen? I would get 3 falses and a true because one of those conditions is true, but the other 3 is not. So we'll rerun it and then we'll see. Yeah, there we go. So false, false, true, false, right? That's exactly right. And if I hit Control Z, Control Z on my keyboard works just like Word. It goes back. Same thing. If I change this to 789, I would get the same thing would happen. And of course, if I reverse that, you're going to get a different output. So that's comparison operators. There are many more in Python. Again, this is just a primer, giving you a high level. Next up is, and last, is logical operators. Logical operators. Yeah, operators. And there we go. Logical operators. And for logical operators, we use it's more natural language. We say x and y, and then that's logic. That's what's called a logical and then there's x or y. That's a logical or, and then not x is a logical not. Just like it sounds. So if we run these, let's see. We'll get, let's see, x, okay. And I think maybe the best way to explain this is for logical operators is we compare we do a comparison between an evaluation of 2 different data types. So while the AI gave us all of this, I'm gonna go ahead and make a minor tweak to this. Let's do this. So starting off with a logical and, so logical operators give us a binary output true false evaluation as well, similar to the way comparison operators work. But what we'll do here is we'll make it a little bit more complicated. So we're going to say, is x greater than y? And so, and y is greater than, less than, let's say greater than x. And then, so in other words, these both have to be true for us to get a true. So in other words, if x is greater than y, which it's not, and y is greater than x, which that part is true, only one of them is true, which means that it will evaluate to a false. So if I rerun this, I should get, yeah, and so I do. I get a false at the end of that. So, and I guess for consistency, we should probably put a print on these. Yeah, here we go. run that, and then it'll do the same thing as we did before. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the fifth one. Okay, so that's right. So then if we did this and then we said or, so in this case with an or, a logical or, like this, um, it's going to evaluate as true. So our very final output, and actually I'm not going to show you the not. You can go look that up. This is kind of as far as I want to take you because and ors, that's your big ones. Everything I'm showing you here is going to be like 70% of anything you're going to come across in terms of a lot of basic to intermediate type of Python. There's going to be more stuff, of course. There's a lot more. It's a very rich programming language. There's a lot you can do with it. But so anyway, so sorry. Back to this logical operator. Last lesson here for or. If we rerun this, and we should get a true, and we do. We got a true. So the logical or, in other words, only one of these has to be true for us to evaluate to a true. Whereas in the and, both have to evaluate to true, and they didn't, and so we got a false. So that's pretty much what your logical operator, that is what your logical operators do. So you have assignment operators, comparison operators, logical operators. Okay, so recap for session 1 lab. We're at just a little over 30 minutes, which is perfect. I didn't want to go too far with our Python primer. As well as our Colab primer and kind of overview of the environment. So, all right, we went through basics of Python, string variables. We went through the Python variables, Python data types, high level, and then we did a little bit of control flow as well as Python operators. And a high level on just the assignment operators, basic arithmetic operators, comparison, and logical. And with that, we are done. Next up, we're going to actually dive into spinning up a large language model in this environment. So go ahead and save this off. Go over here and say, save it. You can save a copy in Drive, or you can just save it right here, and you can rename it, which I highly recommend. Go in here and say Lab 1, Google Colab, whatever you want to call it, Python intro, and then you're good to go. And then what we can do is we can either create another workbook. I'm actually going to continue to use this workbook for our next lab session. You will actually, I'll go ahead and rename this to Google Colab Python intro. Actually, I'm going to say Google Colab and LLM intro, Python Colab Python and LLM intro, because we're going to do lab 2 in this notebook. It'll just be easier. So what I'm going to do is in your next lab session, I'm going to create we'll minimize this, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to create a session 2 lab, and then we'll get into using Databricks and spinning up a large language model. That's all I have for today. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next learning lab.